Whenever someone wants to start, join, or just follows the HOI4 Mods development, everyone has the hope that it's going to be the next best thing. Every major and relevant minor has content, there are several different paths for each of them, really immersive super events, and all while being a completely fresh scenario, rather than something that's already been done and is already being enjoyed by others. But because people have these expectations, it's very unlikely that a concept manages to achieve any sort of success, with the usual outcome being a lackluster release and quickly being forgotten. But if this outcome is so common, how do projects like Kaiserreich, The New Order, and The Fire Rises manage to avoid this fate? In this video, I'll be outlining my experience working on several failed mods, and explain my Loreigin story, as to why I take a single point divergence approach to all my timelines. There's several reasons why I inevitably adopted my single point divergence doctrine. The most defining experience I had for this were when I initially worked on Kaiserreich, but there was one project that I was a part of that never left the initial conception stage, that had so many problems with this scenario from a fundamental level that caused a serious clash between developers, and was arguably the most cursed mod ever for it. Victoria at El Alamo, a mod where Mexico is the preeminent power in the Americas rather than the USA. While at first glance this seems like a pretty normal scenario, those who are familiar with American history may already see the problem. The Alamo was a battle between Texan separatists and the Mexican army. The name of this mod being Victory at the Alamo in Spanish implies that this alternate history's point of divergence is the Mexicans defeating the Texans at the Alamo, when historically they didn't, but in our history the Mexicans did win. And it was only under the threat of American intervention did the Mexicans allow Texan independence before they inevitably became a state in the Union. This discrepancy between its name and its premise lies the largest problem that this project had. Unironically, it was democracy. The mod that would eventually become VEEA started as a Southern victory in the US Civil War scenario called A House Divided. This concept would be revised, with the new scenario being a USA that failed to annex Texas, and eventually completely collapsed. The name change away from A House Divided and towards VEA was determined by a vote among the development team, where it seems like a majority of the people working on the project didn't know that the Texans were actually defeated at the Alamo. This use of democracy to determine aspects of the mod was a frequent solution that the head developer often employed. This on its own is a completely natural thing, but when you accept anybody with an idea onto the team, who then have their own concepts of the scenario that they will vehemently defend, it ends up being a popularity contest between ideas people where cliques start to form and pointless debates happen constantly. There's one developer who had a vision for the greater Republic of Wisconsin, which ended up being divided ethno-linguistically and politically between Germans and Scandinavians. This hyperfixation on an Aryan Greater Wisconsin was justified by working backwards, forcing American lore to ensure that Germans and Scandinavians specifically were discriminated against so that Wisconsin could have been their haven. With several different people working backwards to justify their favorite polity's lore, their lore conflicted with each other, which then required frequent debates to determine the direction that the mod should go. This issue isn't even unique to VEEA. I've been a part of several projects with conflicts between developers. In the past, I used to welcome developer debates in order to ensure that we had the perfect lore, which we could then apply to the scenario. However, debates aren't development. Lore debates don't make nations with orders of battle, foreign and domestic policy, characters for every ideology, and everything else that it takes to make an engaging HOI4 scenario. Heck, you could argue that lore isn't even required for any of these things. The problem was that coders who wanted to participate in the project would then need to wait until the lore is solidified, or else their work would be overwritten, which then leads to them leaving the project entirely. And without coders, you have a bunch of senior ideas guys debating each other in a Discord server, maybe with a very large wiki, but barely any coding progress. This is why I prefer a single point divergence. Having several people having an idea for what they want a nation to be, and then having to debate each other constantly in order to solidify their vision for what they want to do, is exhausting. By having a single point divergence, you can eliminate these debates pretty early on and then move forward from there. But for more complicated projects where there's already an established idea in mind for what the project should be, what are people supposed to do instead? And how do you even define what the project is supposed to be? Whenever Kaiserreich considers making an update or rework for their countries, everything that they would be adding, changing, or removing is detailed in a proposal, usually a Google document. This proposal is then reviewed by the entire team and approved by the Kaiser devs. This process makes sure that every update that Kaiserreich puts out doesn't tarnish the core of what made the scenario iconic. There's an element here where this refined system, which is borderline bureaucratic, is only possible due to the long-standing history of the project and dedicated leadership. When you're initially brainstorming a concept, a proposal for every nation isn't necessary. However, writing something down is a great way to ensure cohesion and proper communication within the development team. Because every time the team expands and people want to contribute to the project, they don't need to wait for the lead developer or any other developer to catch all the new developers up to date with what they're working on. But before you're at the level where you need to make a document for a mechanic or nation, I recommend making a game design document, or GDD, for your mod. Every game that I worked on professionally has always had a game design document. In basically every case, the design document ends up not resembling what the project became at the end. However, the document is extremely vital to ensure that the developers know where to start. I think that one of the reasons why there have been so many HOI4 mods that were kickstarted by my videos is that the videos themselves function as a GDD. And it was also my idea behind having Aftershocks of the Revolution's Redux lore videos, where it would advertise the mod's existence, but also be a great way for people to get caught up on the lore if they wanted to develop the nation themselves. But you don't need to make a video for your game design document. It just needs to outline the project's ideas beyond just the premise. Kaiserreich may have had its tagline being, "What if Germany won World War I?" But Germany does a lot more than just win World War I. They put down the Kuomintang and enforce international concessions in China. They tolerate French syndicalism, which combined with economic struggles following the elimination of their loan to the USA, eventually leads to a second civil war there, where the syndicalists are a prominent faction. Your vision for what your mod should be, the things that make it unique, the ideologies, the leaders, the conflicts that lead up to World War II should all be in this document. Not just for yourself to remember, but for the rest of your team to understand. That way, when you or someone else sits down to start working on a project, you can just look back to the document to know where you're going and why you're doing it. Once you complete a GDD, you can start working on feature-specific documents like designs for nations or mechanics. This is something I've started to do in Talons and Twilight, where I make a document detailing everything that's needed for mine or someone else's vision of a conflict, in order for it to be implemented properly. This sounds simple, but it can be far more complicated when you sit down to do it. It's really easy to say, and then there's a civil war here between 17 different factions, but each tag needs an order of battle, armies, divisions, airplanes with appropriate designs. If it's coastal, it needs a navy, but every nation needs flags. A leader, not just for who's initially the leader, but other leaders are needed for every ideology you added to the game, which can be a lot if you added 10 like Kaiserreich does. And if you have the leader change through events or decision, you'll need another portrait for them as well. You also need portraits for generals, admirals, operatives, and ministers. And all of this is without designing a focus tree, which deserves its own video. Let me know if you want to see that in the comments. All the work I just listed is a lot to process, but by putting down on paper everything that you want to have done for a country or an entire HOI4 mod concept, you can take that document and then make a task list of things that you need to accomplish. I do this in Talons and Twilight by taking my script for an episode, then making a thread in a Discord forum. Depending if it's a coding, writing, or graphics request, I put it in there and give an explanation of what I need. That way, anybody who wants to contribute to the project can browse the list of tasks, pick one, and then deliver it. There's a lot more nuances on how to run a HOI4 mod that I could detail in a future video, including things like setting up a Git and other general tips in order to make sure that there's cohesion in the development team. But I hope that this demonstration of my workflow and lore philosophy helps illustrate the importance of putting down your ideas onto a document for you and other developers to reference. If you want to start a HOI4 mod with this framework in mind, making a simple document and sharing it in modding spaces like the HOI4 modding subreddit, the HOI4 modding co-op, the modding den, or even my Discord server would be a great way to find like-minded developers who want to work with you. And if you submit your GDD to the proper channel in my Discord, you'll have a chance to be featured in a future live stream where I'll go through the submissions and offer my feedback and support for you and your development team. Please submit your GDD for either a new or old mod before the stream, June 8th, 9:30 a.m. PDT. I'm looking forward to seeing your submissions. But if you want to get my own direct feedback for your project, I recommend checking out my Patreon. I offer monthly calls to give you feedback or direction on your scenario, whether it's a paradox mod, a passion project, or a video script. Or if you'd rather just have the occasional discussion with me or other passionate members, you'll be able to get a special Discord role, which will give you access to special channels in the Lore Dad Discord. And with the appropriate tier, you could be able to suggest and vote for the next Loregrave candidate to be included in the public poll after the Loregrave doc or reviews release. Regardless of which tier you pick, or none at all, I hope you've enjoyed this video and wish you the best of luck in your creative endeavors, whether you're a lead developer or a contributor on a larger project. Look both ways before you cross the street, and I hope you have a good day.